Hello, my friends, kindergartners. Today we're doing the dark and dangerous door. And it's a little trickier than Bruin the Brown Bear and the Pompous Prince. You can do it just fine, I know. Just make sure that you take your time and kind of pause and look at things as you go. Remember, you can pause the video if you need to catch up with me at any time. And also remember that skill of pressing sometimes a little harder on the crayon and going back and forth more often, and then sometimes pressing more lightly and not going back and forth on it as much, because today especially you're going to need to use the same crayon to make darker colors and lighter colors. It sounds complicated, it's not that bad. Go ahead, grab your crayons and a piece of paper, a nice firm surface to color on, and we'll get started. Boys and girls, I'm adding in one extra little thing here at the end, and that is when I went to make my picture of the dark and dangerous door, and I finished with the door, and I drew the prints, and I did the wall, and then I started working on the path that goes up to the door, and I didn't realize that you couldn't see what I was coloring. So if you get to that part where I'm talking about the path that goes up to the door and you can't see it, you can skip the video forward a little bit if you want to, and then you can look at what I did. All right, here we are, and by now you've done two of these. You know that what we're going to start with is the border. I'm going to press this little button here and see if it'll focus a little better. It looks like it may not, but that's all right. We can work with fuzzy. You still kind of know what's going on. The color that I'm using here is one called violet red. That means it has some of that purplish kind of color in it, violet, and some of red, which makes it turn out to look a little bit pink. I think we've already talked about in class how pink is just red with some white in it. And the border will go all around. So for the dark and dangerous door, I tend to use my black to make a lot of it. And in some places, I use the black pretty dark. And in other places, I use the black pretty light. And, you know, if you can keep coloring while you listen to me, I'll try to explain a couple of things. I'm going to use the black going in different directions too. And you'll see how the different directions can kind of make, even though it's the same color, make things look a little different. All right, so you can see again, I'm rounding my corners. Just gives me a nicer space to work with when the corners kind of rounded here. I don't have to think so much about getting color into all the corners. Now also, often with P and B, after we make them, you know, I said you could put a background or you could just put one solid color. You could put pictures back there. I did a little bit of trees sometimes or mountains. With this one, you won't need to put a background because the picture itself will have a background. Remember when the prince saw the dark and dangerous door? They were coming up to the wall around the castle, and the dark and dangerous door led into the tunnel that went under that castle wall. So we're going to be drawing the wall around along with it. And remember, it was kind of in like a brambly, foresty place. So if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to join me in trying, you can draw some vines hanging over the wall. And we're going to try drawing the prince in this picture also. When I imagine the prince ready to go on his journey, I think of him wearing kind of foresty sorts of colors. So I imagine him in a green shirt and brown pants. That's how I'm going to draw him. I'm not going to draw Bruin in it because I really want to focus on the prince and how he felt when he was up at that dark and dangerous door and he was scared and he had to be brave. So here I am. I'm almost done. And remember, you don't need to rush through your border. It's fine to pause the video if I've gotten ahead of you. Remember, I've done lots of these borders. In fact, I was adding it up the other day. I've done a border hundreds of times now. So it would make sense that I would get finished with it a little faster than you would. So if you haven't finished your border yet, pause the video to finish it. Now I'm going to get the color for my D, and for the dark and dangerous door for D, I'm going to be making black. Because, you know, I want it to be dark and dangerous looking. And then some other colors to kind of help me out. I'm going to use some gray, maybe a little bit. And then I want to get my stuff out for the prints here. So I'm going to have some brown and some of my apricot. And let's see, a nice dark green color for his shirt, you know, his cloak that he was wearing. So those are the crayons I think I'm going to be working with. I might add some more in, but that's going to be the main thing. And of course, what we're going to start with is the D itself. And remember, if your crayons have broken, I know it's not as pleasant to work with them, but they work just fine. And remember how at school we talk about smarter fingers make for smarter brains? So actually, people who study using our bodies, occupational therapists and physical therapists, they have learned that a great way to become better at drawing and writing is to use teensy little tools. So if you have a short little stumpy crayon, you know, it broke or something, or it's been used a whole lot, you can say, wow, yay! My fingers are going to get so good at using crayons and pens and pencils and writing tools. And remember, too, if we have some mistakes are awesome. They help our brains to learn. It's okay to do it and have it not be just right. It's great if it is just right. We want to do our best on it. We don't want to be sloppy. But if we've done our best and it doesn't turn out just right, that is fine. Can you see how my big line down now is nice and firm and solid? And we're making a D, so you already know, I bet, that our next part is going to be the big curve to the bottom. And we call it a big curve, not because it sticks out a whole bunch, although it does stick out some, but we call it a big curve because it goes all the way from the top down to the bottom. You guys know from making the number 3 and making P and making B that the little curve, it doesn't go all the way from the top down to the bottom. It goes from the top down into the middle of it. But a big curve here that we're doing now is going to go all the way down to the bottom. So like I've done before, you may have noticed with my big line down, I made it and then I kind of went back and evened it out a little bit. So I'm going to be doing that with my big curve too. I've just about got it made, and then I'm going to check it out some. You may have noticed already up at the top, I did some things to even it out. So now that I'm looking at my big curve, it looks like this part here is maybe a little thin. So I'm going to add some parts to it and maybe a little more here. All right. Now I'm going to start making it dark and dangerous, right? So I'm going to use my crayon and I'm going to kind of go diagonally like this. Do you see how it's kind of from one corner to another corner? A diagonal, kind of like the side of a diamond. And I'm doing it a lot lighter. And then I'm going to add some things in. So here it is. All right. And then I'm going to add some lines like this to make it be kind of, you know, like the door is made of some sections of boards or rocks or something. There we go. And remember there was a little keyhole where he could put his key in. So I'm going to put a little keyhole right there. All right. So there's my main door. Now I'm going to work on the prints. And, you know, I don't get real fancy with drawing people. Here's a foot and a foot's attached to a leg, right? Do you see I just kind of did a little oval for his foot? So now I'm going to go up his leg. There it is. And I think that's about the right height. And now I'm going to come down here another leg. And here's going to be another foot. There we go. Do you see? Kind of have a little line and an oval to make my foot. Now I'm going to switch to some green. And I'm drawing him kind of leaning back a little bit, you know, because he was kind of scared, right? So here's his green shirt. And then he's kind of reaching out toward that door. Yeah, there he goes. And he's not really trying to get it, is he? All right, there's his shirt. And now, remember how we just kind of do this round thing for his head? And I'm going to mix my colors. So I'm just doing a little bit of apricot, and then I'm going to give him a little more brown. And of course, he's on a journey, on a quest, so he's not going to be wearing his crown now, is he? And then to fill in his hair, I'm going to just add some nice dark hair. Here he is. Do you see I'm drawing it like we're looking at him sideways? But you can draw him front on with a face if you want to. I don't usually draw eyes and all the face parts. All right, there he is. Kind of scared. All right. Do you see how I kind of did curly in his hair, going round and round with my crayon? That's going to be important because I'm going to make some bricks here. So, you know, the walls around the castle were stone. So on the door, I kind of made it diagonal. And now I'm going to try to go back and forth. So it's kind of, you know, like stone stacked up to make the wall. If you can't quite do that, that's all right. But we want to have some wall here, right? Because this door wasn't just a door in the middle of nowhere. The door was in the wall of the castle. So here we go. And we've got to have this stone wall all the way up to the top of the door up here. See, so I'm going to come over here right now and kind of start getting that in there. And you may be able to see, I'm not coloring this too solidly, am I? Because I kind of want the liney part to show up. I don't want this to be super smooth right now because I want it to look more like it's got rocks in there. I'm trying to be careful not to stick rocks into his face. The prince probably wouldn't like having rocks jab into his nose. All right, there's that side of the door. Now I'm going to get this side of the door. And I'm going to be going to about right up here. Now, do you remember before we made kind of like dirt for Bruin to be on? And we mixed several colors. I don't know if you remember, but they were on a little bit of a path to come up to this door. So I'm going to use mixes of colors again to kind of make a path. So I'm going to start with the apricot because that's the lightest color. And I'm just going to kind of scribbly almost a little bit because, you know, the ground, it's not like a smooth, solid color. And then I'm just going to mix like I do, you know. So then here's some brown now for my path. And I would imagine, right, there might be some gray rocks in there. There we go. And then I'm going to use green over here because remember there was all kinds of stuff, brambly things, and so it was at least grassy, I'm going to say. So here's some grassiness over here and some, oh my goodness. I just realized I was coloring all that and you couldn't see it. There it is. All right. All right, there we go. Now, here's the thing that's kind of fun about this one. This was a wall that had been there for a really long time, and when stones have been in one place for a long time, things start to grow on them. So I actually put like, I don't know, like grass sticking up a little bit on the top of the wall. And one of the things that we always do on this is to make some vines coming down. Do you remember he couldn't see the door right away? Because it was all covered with brambly stuff and vines and, you know, out in the forest where the wall had been, if there are rocks out in the forest, stuff gets on them, right? So go ahead and draw some vines down, getting kind of brambly, and then you don't have to, but what some kids like to do sometimes is to also put some flowers up on top of the wall. There it is. And then now that I've just about got my vines done, I'm about to add in one last thing, and that is up at the top. I didn't get my blue out already. But we should have some sky up there, shouldn't we? because that's the top there. I'm just putting some vines all over the place here. Down the door a little farther. All right, there we go. Now, if you want to, you could add some little color up here, some pink or red or blue. Whoops. To make some flowers on the top of the wall. I'm going to get out my blue and work on coloring my sky blue. And then we'll be all finished. Now, I want the sky, I think, to be a little bit smoother color. So I'm going to kind of set my crayon on one edge and keep it going on that edge, and that'll make that edge be nice and smooth, and the color will turn out more smooth. But whatever makes it work for you, go right ahead. Boys and girls, can you see that this was a much more complicated picture than what you've done before? So congratulations, give yourself a pat on the back, because this had a lot of details to work out, didn't it? Now, I'm sure you guys have worked with your parents already to have a safe place at home to store these pictures so that when it comes all to the end, you have a lovely alphabet book to make. All right, guys, there it is. The Dark and Dangerous Door.